Exodus 19:5 and 6. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The Hebrew word used here for peculiar is segullah, which bears the added connotations of a valued property or special treasure. This adds to our understanding of what it means to be a peculiar people of God. God has selected us to be His special people in the sense of being marked out from the rest of the world by certain distinct qualities. All of us who have received Christ as our Savior have the unique privilege of being God's peculiar people. But the question is, do we bear these characteristics of a peculiar people? Titus 2:14 reads, He it is who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity, and purify for himself a people of his own who are zealous for good works. And in 1 Peter 2:19, it is put in a different way. What distinguishes us as a special people here is that we show forth the praises of Him who called us out of darkness into His marvelous light. So, dearly beloved, we are called God's people, but the question is, do we bear these characteristics of a peculiar people? Are we really zealous for good works? Do our lives show forth the praises of God? Or do our lives being a shame to the Lord? Sad to say, if we look at many believers and examine the lives of what we see is contrary to this. This has been a perennial problem existing even in the time of early church. The book of Titus shows us in 1:16 that in the church on the island of Crete, there were some people who professed that they knew God, but in works they denied Him, being abominable, detestable, and disobedient, and unfit for any good work. The very opposite of what is written in Titus 2:14. And this is why Paul writes chapter 2 of Titus. He wanted the Christians on the Isle of Crete to live not professed Christians who were unfit for any good work, but as a peculiar people who are zealous for good works. Paul points out that every believer in the church, of whatever age group or background he or she comes from, must be firmly committed to live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present world. Titus 2:12. The main reason why the church in every age has found it so difficult to be a peculiar people zealous for good works is that it has been doing it in the present world, a world of ungodliness and worldly lust, a world that is saturated with sinful attitudes, values, and practices. Cultivating godliness while dwelling in an ungodly world is like trying to cultivate a delicate rose plant in a forest terribly infested with worse kinds of weeds and parasites. But since it is the will of God is that we should be a peculiar people, zealous for good works in this unconducive world, we must now have motivations that are sufficiently strong to keep us doing it well. What drives us are two powerful engines. One is grace that propels us from behind, and the other is hope, is like another engine that pulls us from the front. Are you driven by these engines, grace and hope? If not, get on board to be pulled to be zealous for good works. Be blessed.